Are you recording too?
Yes, I just
Okay,
started it
cool.
after you did.
All right. Okay.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I am Bettina Esser, aka B, and I am thrilled to be here with my priestess sister, not circle sister, but priestess sister, Cayelin Castell. And I am thrilled that you're doing this for us. She's going to talk about Venus today. So I'm going to just turn it over to you and you take it however you want to.
I am happy to do that, and thank you, B. Let's just be in joy and be happy, right? So, one of the things about the priestess lineage that B and I are from is that I've just had this wild revelation actually this morning because I started the process in 1995. Nicole Christine, she started her first priestess circle in 1994. And I met a woman that was in the circle and she told me she was doing priestess. She was doing something called priestess. And I was like, priestess? I want to do that. And she hooked me up with Nicole and then I started doing it. Well, had just started my Venus return when that happened. And Nicole had literally started the Venus cycle, the priestess process in the Venus cycle that I was born into.
Hmm.
And so I feel like I have a lot of connections to that. And I didn't realize that at the time because we were just starting to work with the Venus cycle and really understand it back in 1994, 95. And and Nicole was very much aligned with working with the Venus cycle. She thought it was very important. And she passed in 2008, in October of 2008. And I think it was September, about a month before she passed, she asked me to put together all this information on the Venus cycle because she wanted to start incorporating it even more. She already had some of it, but she needed more of it to incorporate into what she was doing with the priestess work. And so I did put together a document. It's like an 8-page document, I think. I will make it available in I can send it to you, Bettina, or yeah, or whatever. I'll put it on my when I post this video, I'll put it in the show notes there because it has kind of the overview of the cycle in it. And interesting, also, Nicole decided one of the very last things she ever did. She started talking about it in 2006, and we actually came together for a big ceremony in Sedona at the foot of the Venus node. There are like 7 Venus nodes around the planet where people can tune into even more deeply the Venus energy. It's like coming onto the planet in those places and then goes out from there. And one of them is in Sedona. So we did this big event and it was called the Sacred Order of the Venus Templars. Here's my certificate behind me of the Sacred Order of the Venus Templars. And this is how important she recognized Venus was. And I'm still processing all of this myself because, oh my gosh, I was in my Venus return when I started the priestess process, my age 40 Venus return. Back in 1995, I turned 40 in 1996, and I had just completed. I did the emergence ceremony just a couple months before I turned 40. Um, so they had the exact Venus return right after that. So that whole process was about me becoming a priestess, learning how to do ceremony, um, and not really understanding the fullness of how we can work with the Venus cycle. It's life changing when we work with it ceremonially, and so I was just getting started with that, like learning ceremony and all of that back then. And my next Venus return in 2002, my life was a mess. I was going through a lot of changes and I didn't get much of a chance to work with it. Actually, it started in 2002 and completed when I turned 48 in 2004. And then, but I did do some ceremony with it, and I started to recognize the importance of this cycle and how when we align with it, and it comes from this idea that we're informing the mysteries as much as they're informing us. So when we're working with a cycle in a ceremonial way, then we're helping to inform the energy, as well as the energy is helping to inform us about how to work with it. And that's what Bettina did mention something about being involved in one of our things that we do now online, a ceremonial journey with the Venus cycle that started in 2014, and I'll share a little bit more about that in a moment. So the in at my age 56 Venus return, I worked with it ceremonially the whole entire time. I journaled, I created a Venus altar, I went out and saw Venus and the moon together every single time I could. See them when if it wasn't cloudy, and I worked with it ceremonially, and it was so empowering and so life changing. I started guiding clients and people through doing that process themselves. And then in 2014, actually at the end of 2013, I had been asked to teach the synodic cycles of not only Venus, Mars, and Mercury, and the Moon also have synodic cycles that are different than the Venus cycle. To teach that to Tammy Brunk, who wanted to learn how to be able to teach this to other people. And the way that it had been taught in the past was more of a didactic teaching, more of a like information. And for some reason, I couldn't get excited about that. And so we set it all up. I said, yes, I'd do it. We set it all up, and we couldn't get anybody to sign up for it. And I said to Tammy, I'm sorry, I think it's me because I don't have any energy for this. It's just not lighting me up. It's not exciting me. And I said, maybe if we did this in a different way, we get people interested, and then they would be interested in coming and learning more about it. And she was totally with me on that. She got very excited about that idea. We had 3 weeks before the first Venus Moon gate was happening within a new cycle that had just started. And we decided we would just lead people through. And as the cycle was happening, and it was based on this idea that the ancient Sumerians and the Babylonians worked with the Venus cycle, and they would do Venus cultural ceremonies every 8 years when Venus was rising as morning star closest to the spring equinox. This was when Venus rose closest to the December solstice, so we were kind of keeping connected to that magic and that mystery. And so we had 3 weeks before we had to do our first class. We had 65 people sign up because we were lit up. We had so much energy for this. We didn't know what that we were doing. Had no idea what it was going to be and or how we were going to do it, but we just did it. And by the time we were done with it, we had over 100 people. That was 8 years ago. We are now back in that Venus cycle. Currently, I'll share more about that in a moment, because every 8 years, Venus returns to the place it was before. And that 8 year Venus cycle means that every 8 years, if you are 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48, 56, 64, 72, 80, 88, 96, or 104, and if you're turning that now, between now and August of 2023, you're in a Venus return. And it is a 19-month cycle. So if you've turned that age since January of this year to August of 2023, then you're in a Venus return. And so it basically suggests that whatever the Venus energy is for you, what is the intended expression of the feminine? Now, for women, this is her emerging feminine identity, the aspect of the feminine she's here to bring forth into this life. For men, this is the aspect of the feminine that is within them, because women have an internal masculine and men have an internal feminine. And so when we work with this cycle, we can tune more into what that energy is. So this was really remarkable to me. And when I think about how Nicole requested that I put together this information about Venus, that was back in 2008. And then in 2014, we started Venus Alchemy. And I'm still astounded. I have learned so much now. Venus just speaks to me in ways that I am always surprised by. So in the current cycle, Venus arose as morning star in January of 2022, so just a few months ago. What happens in this cycle is that she makes 7 or 8 conjunctions with the moon in the morning sky. Then she travels with the sun. That so she was making her conjunctions up until the end of August. She made 8 conjunctions with the moon in the morning sky. And it's a waning moon. And in the way that the Sumerians tell the story is that the Inanna, the Babylonians used Ishtar. It's the same essence of the goddess or Venus. It's the story of Venus, how she moves through the sky. And she decides to make this journey to the underworld because her sister's husband has just died. And in some of the tellings of the story, they say it's the great bull of heaven, Gulagana, and Ereshkigal or Ereshkigal, there's different ways people pronounce that, the queen of the underworld. And her husband's died, and so Inanna's going to the funeral. So she dresses up in all her priestess regalia. She puts on her crown, she has her rod and staff, she has her royal robe, she has her necklace, she has a breastplate, she has her ring of power, all of these symbols that represent each of the chakras. And as she's going into the underworld, she has to the funeral, she has to give up a vestment at each gate. And so it's representing the giving up of distortions that happen at each of the gates, at each of the chakras. So we could say the first thing she gives up is her crown chakra, her connection to spirit, any distortions she has around her connection to spirit, to the divine, to her higher self, whatever that's about. At the third eye or the next gate, it's she gives up her rod and staff that represents her vision, her ability to do magic, any distortions that she might have around that at that point, representing the third eye chakra. Then at the next gate, it's the lapis lazuli beads around her neck that represent her throat chakra and how she communicates. And are there any distortions or ways that she's afraid to communicate or ways that she communicates that isn't actually helpful? She's releasing and letting go of all that. So that happens all the way on her journey down into the underworld. And then what happens is, and we can see that in the sky by the Venus moon conjunctions that happen once each month. Then Venus disappears because she gets too close to the sun, and she travels with the sun for 60 to 90 days. And that's considered the underworld time. And in the story, Inanna comes face to face with her sister, the dark goddess, who is not really happy with her. And she's got a lot of rage and anger, and her husband's just died, and she's going through all kinds of whatever challenges she's experiencing. And so she just kills Inanna, hangs her on a meat hook, is how they tell the story, and just leaves her there. Well, before Inanna went into the underworld, or Ishtar went into the underworld, she knew that it might not be safe, so she got her friend and also servant Ninshabar, which is the planet Mercury, to promise if she didn't come back, she'd go get help. And so Ninshabar, or Mercury, when she doesn't come back, goes to the different gods, Saturn, Jupiter. They have different names: Enki, Enlil, Nana, the moon god, and she asks them to help. And Nana won't help, Enlil won't help. I think the last one she goes to is Enki, representing Jupiter, and he decides he'll help because they're like, we can't interfere with the ways of the underworld. We're not gonna mess with that. So what happens is that Enki takes the dirt out from underneath his fingernails and forms these little beings. One's the Kugara and the other's the Galatur. One is the food of life and the other has the water of life. So he gives them the food of life, the water of life, and tells them to go into the underworld, and he instructs them and says, when you see Ereshkigal, just reflect back to her whatever's going on for her. And so they walk into the underworld, nobody even notices. They come upon Ereshkigal, who is moaning and grieving and just crying and sobbing and having her rage and her fit and whatever's going on, and she's just talking about how unfair everything is. And in the way they translate the Sumerian text, they say she says, "Oh, oh, my insides," and so the Galatur and the Kagara say, "Oh, oh, your insides." She goes, "Oh, oh, my outsides," and they go, "Oh, oh, your outsides," and "Oh, oh, it's just not fair. Inanna gets to be queen of heaven. I'm stuck here in the underworld. Oh, it's not fair." And they're right. And they're like, right, it's not fair. So they just reflect back to her whatever she's feeling, whatever she's thinking, and she is so astounded that she was getting empathy and compassion for her situation. She feels healed by that, and so she tells them, "I will give you whatever you want. I want to give you a gift. You've given me such a gift. I want to give you a gift in return." And she starts naming all the gifts she wants to give them. And there are many, she's like pages and pages of the gifts that she can give to them. And they say, "Nope, nope, nope, no, no, no." And then she said, "Well," at the end, she goes, "Okay, I can't think of anything else. So if there's something you would like, I would love to give you a gift. Please tell me what it is." And what they said is, "We want Inanna back." And she's like, "Oh, I don't really want to give you Inanna back." And so but she had already promised, so she had to give Inanna back. But she said Inanna has to send someone in her place. Anyway, then Inanna rises up into the evening sky after she's been sprinkled with the water of life and the food of life and brought back to life, and then she meets with the moon. So she moves far enough away from the sun, she becomes visible in the evening sky, and she meets with the moon, waxing moon, by the way, waning moon in the morning sky, waxing moon in the evening sky. And she's reclaiming and regaining the vestments that she lost at each of the gates. She had to give up something going down into the underworld. So this story, and then of course she also has to send somebody in her place. And interesting that it happens to be her consort Dumuzi, who represents Mars. And there are certain times in the Mars cycle when Venus and Mars meet in the evening sky, and Mars goes directly into the underworld. So it's like she sends him. So these stories were designed to help us understand how to work with these cycles and to have a framework to put around them as a way to be ceremonial with it. So again, the Sumerians and the Babylonians reenacted this cycle, this story, as a way to honor the Venus cycle and to honor the ways that we all will gain distortions. We will all gain things over time that we need to let go of, that are time to shed and release and let go of. So that's the morning star phase of the Venus cycle. Then the underworld phase is when she's going through the death process. So I like to say she's dying to who she thinks she is, so she can be reborn to who she really is. And the rebirth point comes when she rises up into the evening sky, but she's still got a process of reclaiming things now in a new and healthy way, having let go of the things that don't work for her. And that is really what we decided to do with this Venus journey, is do a ceremony with it each month to look at what's going on with Venus. And the other thing that happens is that Venus rises as morning star 5 times every 8 years, and you see the 5-pointed star behind me here. This is the pentagram that Venus creates in the sky as she goes through her 5 different Venus cycles, about 19 months, takes 8 years for it to come back to a starting point. So we're all born somewhere on the point of this pentagram within a cycle of Venus. And we could say the sign Venus is in when she rises as morning star represents the aspect of the feminine, or the archetypal expression of the feminine that is being worked with in collective humanity, by collective humanity at that time, over that 19 months. So, what's keeping the expression right now? We've got the Capricorn goddess on the world stage, and that's where we started this. And what we recognized was that we were working with the circle of grandmothers, that Capricorn represents the wise elders, the grandmothers, the ones who know the most effective and efficient ways to get things done that will support the next 7 generations. Or I like to say several generations because we don't necessarily want to limit it to 7. And this is something that has been lost, that this grandmother wisdom has been more or less lost in our culture. It's coming back now, I think. And part of it is maybe because we've been really focusing more attention on this aspect of the feminine.
I feel like
Uh,
the wisdom isn't what's been lost, it's the recognition that it exists in people who don't have the wisdom yet.
yeah.
There's the whole casting aside of the elder as if they were invisible and stupid.
Yes. Yes. And as somebody who's in my elder years, and also finally able to maybe in this cycle, I was like, I know I have had a lot of priestess sisters who've done croning ceremonies, and I just haven't been able to do that. But I think that I'm going to do that in the evening star phase of this cycle, because I am 66, a magical number, and I have been doing this work for a long time, and I think it's time to claim it when Venus comes back into the evening sky. And so, yeah, you're right, Bettina. No, it's not that the wisdom was lost, but the wisdom to recognize the wisdom is what's been lost. Literally, the founding fathers of the United States, when they were creating their Constitution, went to the Iroquois Confederacy and they said, can we model our Constitution after yours because it has worked so well? And they said, yes, but here's the thing you must include, and that is to consult the grandmothers for any major decisions. And of course, that's the thing they didn't include. And they were warned that if they didn't include this, then things would become a mess. So, guess what? We have a mess. And but that grandmother wisdom that was recognized by indigenous tribes and peoples and so on, um, just kind of got sort of lost in the patriarchy. So right now we are in a time when we can reclaim that, working with that ceremonially with intention, when we come together intentionally. And I just read something about this recently, and of course I was also involved in transcendental meditation for many years, and their whole thing was when you get enough people who are uh, vibrating with an enlightened state of consciousness, it's just there's like a tipping point, but it's a lot smaller number than you think. It's like less than 1% of the population. It's like n squared. So if you have 8 billion people, it's more like 9,000 people. If you got them all vibrating with that, it would change everything in the blink of an eye. It would change the whole vibrational energy of everything. And yeah, it's like the 100 monkey effect. It's like what we when we come together with an intention, and these are, there's global meditations that happened a lot. I haven't seen any in recent years as much, but the maybe I don't know if it was, you'd think with COVID we would have more of them, but or maybe I just haven't been connected to them. But when we come together and place our intention and attention on a specific thing, like how do we come from a place of greater love? How do we vibrate with love? So that's what's going out into the world. How do we heal the wounds and the places within us that keep us from being in that higher vibrational energy? And so a lot of what we've been recognizing we do in the Venus work is that, exactly that. It's like, how are we healing the wounds of the past so that we can go forward? How are we dying to who we think we are so we can be reborn to who we really are, to that divine essence, that divine expression of ourself? So the opportunity, or the people can do this on their own. It's I like I said, in at my age 56 Venus return, I did it all myself. I wasn't doing it with people. Occasionally I get together and do maybe a ceremony or something with somebody, but uh, it was so powerful, and I had such profound and deep insights, and it changed everything for me so much. I highly, highly recommend it. And you can do it in any Venus cycle, but especially in your own Venus return. So in the document that I was talking about, you can figure out when your next Venus cycle is going to start. And the you can start to work with it as a way to energize more of this return of an understanding of the divine feminine. She is not just mother. She is not just partner. She's not just helpmate. She's not just the things that our culture has tended to define her as. She is so much more than that. And the 5 points of the star are Capricorn, as I mentioned. So the grandmother wisdom, and also the ability to get things done in the most effective and efficient way possible. Having the wisdom to know the practicality, how to get the best results for the least amount of effort.
Can I ask a question, Cayelin?
Mhm.
You're talking about the 5 points of the star, and I think you alluded to one of them being Capricorn.
Yeah.
And this is so she moves into this constellation, sort of, as from our point of view, or is this just
So
explain that and what
I'm
the five
talking,
are?
yeah, this is a great question. I'm talking about the seasonal signs.
Okay.
So when Venus rose as morning star in January of 2022, she rose with a star called Nunki in the constellation of the Archer, but she was at 15 degrees. I guess she was at 15 degrees Capricorn. And that star, so the seasons have to do with solstices and equinoxes, the zero Aries point, the zero Capricorn point,
Mhm.
the zero Cancer point, the zero Libra point represent the equinoxes and the solstices. And then the rest of the seasonal signs, from zero Capricorn to zero Aquarius, 30 days later we go into the season of Aquarius, and 30 days later we go into the season of Pisces, and 30 days later we go into the season of Aries. They are not in the constellations that are named those names, because there's this thing called precession and they keep moving. And one of the challenges that we have is that they named them the same name. The constellation and the sign are the same name. And now most, like for example, 15 Capricorn is with a star in the Archer, also known as Sagittarius. uh,
Right.
so
So she
yeah,
rises during the time of Capricorn, during the 30-day window when the sun
yes,
is in Capricorn.
after the December solstice. Yeah, she rose on January 12th, I think it was.
Okay. So what are the other four signs?
Good question. So from Capricorn, we go to Leo. So from the top of so if we say Capricorn's at the top of this pentagram, then we go down to the bottom, Leo. Then we go over to the side here. Let me see if I can make my hand go right there, right here. That was the Aries point. It's going to be Pisces in 2025. And then we come across to this point. That was the Scorpio point, but it's now the Libra point. It changes every 104 years or so. The average is about every 104 years. So over time, it will shift into a new point. And then the bottom, after the Libra point is the Gemini point, and then it goes back to the Capricorn point. Um, and so we won't have a shift for a while, but we're having two shifts. In 1974, it shifted into Capricorn, so it'll be 104 years before it shifts out of that one, or approximately. Sometimes it's 96 years, sometimes it's 112 years, but close enough. And then the Leo point changed in 1975. So it went from Virgo to Leo, and they moved backwards. So it went from Aquarius into Capricorn. It was going from Aries into Pisces. They move backwards, and the whole pentagram shifts. Takes about 1,260 years for the whole thing to make one
Mhm.
complete rotation. So all the points, all the different seasonal signs will be represented over that time, but five are primarily on the world stage at any one time. And one, whatever the Venus cycle happens to be, one happens to be the right now the Capricorn cycle, and then in August of 2023 it'll move to the Leo cycle. So I love that you asked this question, because the one of the things that we also work with is the Venus signature. meaning that depending on where you are born into the Venus cycle, was it morning star? Was she in the underworld? Was she in the evening sky? Was she retrograde in the evening sky? Was she retrograde in the underworld? Was she retrograde in the morning sky? That all has different meaning. It adds to our understanding of what Venus is all about. So I'll just give you an example. I'll use myself. I have Venus in Aries. Uh, um, she's definitely the warrior woman. She will stand and fight for others, and she wants there to be justice. When this is a healthy expression of Aries, and she's fierce and she's intense. So we worked a lot with Sekhmet when we did that cycle, because Sekhmet's job is to restore justice to the planet. But was a person who could stand for other people, but never for myself. And
Hmm.
I have Venus in Pisces, so I'm also an empath. And I have Sun in Pisces, so there's also other factors that can come into play with this. But the main meta goddess that was on the world stage when I was born was Scorpio. She's the sorceress, meaning she connects with source, and she's all about creating magic. Now, when I didn't know this, when I decided to live a magical life, when I was going through a really rough time back in the late 80s, and I went through a divorce, and just life was hell. And I made a decision that I wanted to live a magical life. That's kind of like a Scorpio overview of my Venus, going, you know what, we're going to start working the magic here. I'm also an evening star. So when she's an evening star, you're adding earth energy. You're adding the wisdom of Capricorn. You're adding the 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 Taurian beauty and pleasure and intimacy, and you're adding Virgo as the priestess. So you add those factors to my Venus in Aries. She's very much a priestess. She's very much into now being more, as I'm getting into my elder wisdom time, getting into that place of it. And but the Scorpio point changed to Libra in 2018. And uh, I was just recognizing this, have been recognizing this recently, and because it starts shifting back and forth between Libra and Scorpio, or whatever sign it's shifting, it shifts back and forth for a while.
Hmm.
And I really wanted to do a lot of collaboration and partnering with people to do work, to do this Venus work, to do other work that I was doing. And so I did that. So I was doing that, but I have zero Libra on my chart. And so I was like, oh, that influence was already starting to speak to me. It's just so it adds to our understanding. It's like gives us a fuller picture of what it is that Venus is meant to be for us. So is she morning star, evening star, underworld, and then there's the metamorphic underworld when she's retrograde. Um, is uh, is she, what's the Venus meta goddess on the world stage at the time you were born? Was she Capricorn? Was she Leo? Maybe she was Aquarius, Leo, and changed to Leo. Maybe she was, Aquarius and changed to Capricorn. She was Virgo and changed to Leo. Um, Currently, if it's Aries, it's shifting to Pisces. If it was Scorpio, it's shifting to Libra. And then Gemini's been Gemini since the 1948, I think. So, um, is what influences, and you sometimes we're adding influences to that understanding as well. The other thing about the Venus signature is that it's not only what phase the Venus cycle you were born in, not only what meta goddess was on the world stage, but what sign was the sun in? Is that different than your Venus? That adds an influence. What sign was the moon in? That adds an influence. Um, what outer planets are to your Venus? I have Neptune and Uranus to my Venus. So that adds additional insights into that Venus signature. What is that intended expression of the feminine? So that we could say you could have 12 women or 12 people with Venus and Aries. They're not going to be the same. They're going to all have different part of that signature um, that's going to express for them. So, does that make sense?
Yes, it's just so fascinating. There's like just listening to you talk and knowing the little bit that I know about your body of work, like you have taken it to such a deep level, like, and it's so intricate. I love the story of Inanna and the surrendering of her raiment and the hanging on the meat hook and then the regaining of her raiment as she comes out and um, takes her power back. Like she was really cocky when she went to visit her sister, right? She was super arrogant. Oh, I'm the queen of heaven and earth. I can do whatever I want. And she got down there, and Ereshkigal was like, "Girl, no, you can't. Bye, neat hook,
Right.
whatever."
Yeah, because part of the story that I didn't share is how before Anana goes to the underworld, she gets the sacred me, the texts, the sacred text or the sacred me from her father. She wins them from him, and she's pretty proud of herself for doing
Right,
that.
right, and the gambling thing. And so she comes out with more humility
Yes.
and also more personal sovereignty. When she finds out what her lover has been up to, she's like, well, none of that.
Yeah.
Bye.
Your turn. You go.
Right.
You got to have this initiation now.
I'm gonna put you on a cruise. Yeah, I love her story so much. And the I I guess just relating things to story is, to me, it feels so deeply ingrained just in my humanity to understand things through story.
Yes.
And bringing it back to the way the Babylonians and the Sumerians created the story to explain the world. Now we just really need the story to feel connected to the world. We have so much science, and it's almost like a new religion. And, we're missing sort of the heart. And these stories really bring us back to something that's innate and sacred in all human beings and back into our bodies. It's beautiful.
Thank you. Yes. And the thing about Venus is she is closest to Earth. She's the brightest thing in our night sky. She is our sister planet. And she is, we need to honor and we need to respect and we need to tune into her and ask her what how can we best have a relationship with her and what is it that she has to teach us. And I feel like working with the Venus cycle is such a great way to begin to do that. And so I just want to share a little quick story in this cycle of Venus, this particular Venus cycle of Capricorn. Started in 1974, the year I graduated from high school, went to college, dropped out, moved in with my dad, had a horrible experience, moved out, went to MIU, Maharishi International University, and it's like as Venus was coming out of the underworld, that's when I went there and things started getting better. I was like, this stuff really works. I don't know why this cycle, because it's not my Venus cycle, but definitely very powerful cycle for me. And then so that was 1974. In 1982, my first child was born. In 1990, my youngest child was born. I had twins in between. In 1998, my mother died in this cycle. In 2006, I married my best husband ever, my third husband, best husband ever. He's so awesome. We just celebrated our 16-year wedding anniversary. We got married when Venus and the Sun were conjunct in this cycle on October 22nd of 2006.
Wow,
And
happy
so,
anniversary.
and we did it on purpose because we wanted to create a new way of doing relationship.
Hmm.
And that we both had previous experiences of how it didn't work in the old paradigm and the old way. So we used the power of Venus and Mars conjunct the Sun in 2006 for our wedding date. So these are the kinds of things you can do with this information is you can create really powerful ceremony. And our intention was that we would have a better relationship going forward, it would just keep getting better and better. And that's exactly what's happened for us 16 years later. I just couldn't even imagine I could be this happy with somebody. So there's that. And then so that was in 2006. And then in 2014, we started Venus Alchemy. So in 2022, Venus is getting ready to go into the underworld in the cycle of Capricorn. And I suddenly have this experience of Sekhmet. And we work with Sekhmet quite a bit. She's the Leo goddess. She definitely connects to the Leo goddess and the Aries goddess expression of the feminine. But she, as she was getting ready to drop into the underworld, I just had this. I had her like she just like appeared in front of me, and she's like, "I'm Venus with the sun." She wears the solar disk on her head.
Mm-hmm.
I had really powerful experiences in back in 1999. I went to Egypt right after my mom died. I inherited a little bit of money, so I took that money and I went to Egypt and I went to Sekhmet's temple and had this really powerful experience with her. I did a little video on it if people want to know more about it. Um, it kind of tells the story a little more fully, but uh, I also in 2006 had a dream with Sekhmet, and she opened the way for me to connect with the grandmother elder women um, in this dream that I had. So this and that was again in the cycle.
Mm.
And then I'm like, how did I not get that you were Venus with the sun on your head? How did I not get that before? Like, ah. Anyway, so that's like the big revelation that's been emerging for me around this particular cycle. Venus is in the underworld currently from September 14th to December 1st. Technically, I mean, we use a 10-degree orb, but sometimes you don't see her for long before. I have a big mountain in the east, so I didn't see Venus a lot. You know, she disappeared before September 14th for me. And then there were people who had low horizon lines who saw her after September 14th. So it's not always perfect. It's just what we can go out and see, but we use a 10-degree orb because that is usually when she's not visible. And 10-degree orb when she comes back into the morning sky. I mean evening sky. But again, you got to have a low horizon line to be able to see her. And then her first conjunction with the moon will be on uh, December 24th. And that'll be when she starts back through the chakra gates, starting at the root chakra, going back up
Mm-hmm.
through the gates. So she can reclaim her healthy life force energy at that time.
Right. So she'll move back up. I'm trying to picture this in the sky, but
Well, so what happens is, interestingly, when Venus rises in the morning sky, the Sumerians and the Babylonians really knew this. She like rises up really fast. Boom. She's just really quick. She's really close to the earth and it comes up on the horizon and it's bright and you cannot miss her and she's right there. And then she gets then she does that really fast and then she starts sinking back towards the horizon and then disappears. In the evening sky, she rises up really slow
hmm.
until she gets to her greatest elongation, and then she starts sinking back. Um, but she's gotten through almost all the gates, and before she starts to sink back towards the horizon. So it's so literal. I mean, it's like a waning moon. She's losing vestments. The moon is losing light. She's losing her vestments
Mm.
or releasing them, letting them go. And the waxing moon, she's regaining them, she's reclaiming them,
That's amazing.
and the moon is gaining light. It's like these things are so precisely uh, put together. It's just astounding.
Really is fascinating. I've
Hmm.
never quite figured out what my Venus is because it's at the point where she's come up, regained her vestments, and is at like the apex and getting ready to come back down. I don't know. That was a hard one. Morning or I don't know.
So, if you, I have a booklet. The people want to know how to figure these things out. It's like
Yes.
look them
Did
up
you
really
do that?
quick.
Melody told me that you have made a booklet. How do I order that booklet, Cayelin?
I'll send you a link and you can
Okay.
send it to people and I'll give you a special on it. But
Also, post
so
it
when
on
so
the event page.
if you tell me when I can look it up.
Sure. July 8th, 1964.
Okay, I'm going back. It starts in 1929. It goes to 2052. So
Oh,
you can look up cycles going forward and
awesome. That's
that
the
kind
year
of
my
thing.
dad was born.
Uh-huh. Okay. 1964. finding you. Okay. And what was the date
It's
again?
July 8th.
July. Okay, so Venus was retrograde.
Yes.
Yes, and she's stationed direct on on July 11th. So this is a special phase of the Venus cycle that we've determined in the Venus signature. We created a Venus signature series, and we started looking at all the different possibilities of what Venus could be and what it means. So when she's retrograde in the morning sky, right before she stations direct, she's in an in between time. She hasn't It's like when she stations, she's become morning star, she started the cycle, she started the journey, but she hasn't made it to the first gate yet, and she's still retrograde. So in alchemy, the between is where the greatest alchemy can happen, the greatest magic and so on pieces can happen. So it's not like a defined place, it's an undefined place
Right.
that you can work with. And because it's also in Gemini, the trickster, the shapeshifter, the creative new world storyteller. Um, she's not going to be like normal, whatever normal is. She's going to have her own way of expressing, probably more through a trickster kind of energy, a more playful, let's not take it so seriously kind of energy.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of magic that happens in that phase of the cycle. So,
Awesome. Yeah,
um,
that's true. Interesting. Thank you for looking that up.
yeah.
I would love to have that book. If you'll post the link on the event, like the Facebook event page, that'll mean that everybody has access to it. That would be amazing.
Yeah,
And
I'll do that.
yeah,
Sure, sure, yeah,
thank you.
yeah. And then what you'll get is a download, and I highly recommend you go and print it off. And I got mine
Spiral bound.
spiral bound, yeah. And I have several of them. I want to be. It's like I have it in my desk, I have it in my bedroom, I have different places so I can just look things up easily.
It's hard. It really is hard. Like there's a whole process for those of you who don't know this, like figuring out someone's Venus cycle is not like you don't just look in the ephemeris and you know it. It's a whole process. And this book is going to be magical. Thank you. Thank you for doing all of that.
You're welcome. Yeah. You're welcome. Yeah, it was months and months of work. And I'm really glad I did it. When I did, I had there was somebody who created a program that you could calculate all of the different cycles with, that I had helped to create or be a part of. And then the person who created it died, and it's never been updated, and it can't
Oh,
get it anymore. So, so luckily I had done that before.
yeah.
Before that program disappeared. So, yeah.
Cool. Do you
So I
have a
know
few
we're
minutes?
probably getting close to our time, but are
It's
there any
going to,
questions?
there you go. Anybody have questions? You just pop in and ask. I'm going to change to gallery view just so I can see. Everybody's really quiet.
Either they're just blown away or whatever.
Yeah, it's a lot of information and it can be really sort of one of those things that you just need to sit with for a while and absorb, and maybe they'll have questions later. Um, I do want to say that you can find Cayelin on her websites. I don't know if I posted them. I think I posted them in the event, but I will go back and post them. There's CaylinCastell.com and VenusAlchemy.com.
Dot
And then you have a third one, right?
mystaralchemy.com, because now and this is something that for people who are interested in the how how we evolve over time, how things evolve over time. It is the movement of the seasonal signs through the constellations. And so we're looking at the constellations and the meaning of the constellations, and then how is that informing the signs? So, for example, the one I was just working on earlier today is Regulus, which is one of the four royal stars, the heart of the lion. Uh, Venus will be hanging out with Regulus a lot next year when she's retrograde in Leo. Um, but well, she's going to be retrograde in Leo, but Regulus is currently overlaid by Virgo. So that happened in 2011, the end of 2011, when that seasonal sign started overlaying that star. And the seasonal sign of Virgo will be over that star for 2,160 years. Hence why because it was Leo for 2,160 years, the seasonal sign of Leo. So that's where the confusion has come in. So this class, the My Star Alchemy classes, and this particular one on the zodiacal constellations is all about the difference between the signs and the constellations and how are they helping to inform us now. And I really, the class that we did on the zero Aries point and when it went into the constellation of the fish, also known as Pisces, um, back in around the time of the beginning of the patriarchy. It was is
Mhm.
or yeah, it's just been fascinating. And then how the in that constellation, Aries has been very warlike. So we looked at a lot of the history of all of that, and it's getting ready to move out of the fish and into the water bearer. And that's what people call the age of Aquarius because that constellation is also called Aquarius, but it's not the sign Aquarius because it's the zero Aries point moving into that constellation. And it could be 200 more years. It could be, it's like the stars kind of overlap each other. And we looked at all of that stuff too. So that's what that's all about. So my star alchemy, looking at the stars and truly we did a class last year on the magical stars of the ancient alchemists. There's 15 of them, and they worked with them to create elixirs and talismans and amulets and star shields and different intentions and things that they were doing with that. So we looked at all of that in that class. It was really fun.
That sounds really interesting. I love making herbal remedies with like the phases of the moon and sometimes with whatever's going on in the sky, but it's not something I paid a lot of attention to. That sounds really intriguing.
Yeah, the elixirs they would make their infusions, and there were certain plants and certain gems that were connected to these Bahinian stars. Um, so they were definitely working the magic around that.
Amazing. You have such a huge body of work and your passion and your love of what you do is just so clear and obvious. I still refer back to the reading that we had sometimes. There were some things that we talked about that were just like, okay, I'm still thinking about that. So if you're looking to have a reading, are you still doing those?
Yes, I am. Yeah, yeah.
So
I see somebody commented the end of the Kali Yuga, and that is true. So from the Vedic perspective, they see four yugas or four ages, and there's a lot of speculation about when that's actually ending. But I saw a very credible article that looks like 2025 is they're saying is the end of the Kali Yuga. Now some places will say Kali Yuga's already ended and we're already on the ascent back up out of the dark age, but it's hard to see that yet.
yes.
Yeah. And we're also the other thing I'll just share really quickly, the where the December solstice sun rises is on the galactic cross at the galactic center, where
Mhm.
there's a deep, dark black hole. And that started in 1926. It came within 1 degree of that cross of where the plane of the galaxy intersects the plane of the solar system. And so it moves 1 degree every 72 years. So from 1926 to 2070 is this shift of only every 26,000 years can the December solstice sun be there. So we're in a massive cosmological shift of ages. Just something to also contemplate as we're moving through all these different things.
Mhm.
Plus, we've got the total lunar eclipse coming up on November 8th, the election day of the in the US. Uh, and it's with Uranus. it's going to be a wild card factor. And there's other things that are going on, and um, there's videos and things that we did on that. I will send that to you too, so that if anybody wants to go get more of that information, they can do
Yeah,
that.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kaylin. We are
You're welcome.
a few minutes after 2. I really appreciate we've been trying to plan this for a year. The women in my priestess circle, we tried to do astrology online. That was really, really hard. We did the best we could with what we had. Um, this has been a great educational thing. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
So welcome. My total pleasure.
Yeah. All right. So we're done. And let me stop the recording.